und wir sehen hier erstmal viele Sachen. Zunächst einmal, wir haben 300 Spieler, was schon wirklich sehr viel ist, und wir spielen 9 Runden Fürst. Davon werden heute aber nicht alle gespielt, sondern morgen auch, wie das eben so üblich ist, denn ich gucke das Ganze nochmal genau nach. Wir haben heute 7 Runden und dann eben morgen 2 Runden plus Top 16. So, jetzt sind wir hier direkt im Spiel. Ist jetzt sehr schnell alles. Es tut mir leid, dass das hier jetzt so schnell vonstatten gegangen ist. Und wir gucken einfach mal an, was wir hier sehen. Normalerweise haben wir im ersten Feature-Match immer den Spieler bzw. den Gewinner des letzten Jahres. Jedoch ist dieses Mal das Ganze nicht möglich, denn die Person ist eben nicht auf dem Turnier. Das bedeutet also, wir haben hier leider nicht den Gewinner von 2023, aber wir haben den letzten Gewinner, um genau zu sein, hier unten. Brian hier ist ebenfalls ein National Champion und wir sehen hier jetzt auch das erste Spiel. So, wir haben hier Orcust Sky Striker gegen Melodious und Melodious ist ein Deck und wir starten gleich direkt mit einer sehr, sehr guten Karte, würde ich sagen. Genau die beste, es ist die Fusion-Karte, wo wir eben aus dem Deck fusionieren können, was sehr, sehr stark ist. So, und wir grooven uns jetzt langsam ein. Denn wie gesagt, wir sind jetzt natürlich sehr abrupt gestartet, beziehungsweise sehr spontan hier reingegangen, was aber natürlich kein Hindernis macht eben für uns hier. Und das ist eben die Ostinato, um genau zu sein, eben die Fusionskarte. Wir sehen auf der anderen Seite, Orcust Sky Striker ist jetzt ein Deck, was man jetzt nicht so auf dem Schirm hätte, was man picken würde eben für so ein Event, sondern ja, man hätte sich gedacht, dann nimmt man ein anderes Deck. Aber ja, wir sehen hier, Brian hat hier 2 Karten verdeckt und geben hier ab. So, jetzt sehen wir bereits die erste Karte, um genau zu sein, das neue Fusionsmonster. Um genau zu sein, Bacha, die musikalische Maestra. Entschuldigung, wenn ich es natürlich nicht perfekt ausgesprochen habe, aber es ist eben ein neues Monster, eben aus dem neuen Set, um genau zu sein, eben.
To get familiar with those Melodious cards as well. We fused into Bacha, which is another one of the new cards for the deck, and Bacha just needs 2 Melodious monsters. We used the refrain, and now we are just going into the effect of Bacha. And I mean, Melodious is actually a really, really interesting deck for this weekend overall, because Melodious just can work as a pure deck, as Dennis is bringing it here, but it can also technically just work as an engine within basically any kind of deck, because the activation of Ostinato, contrarian to Branded Fusion, doesn't lock you into any extra deck mechanics for the rest of the turn. There are other parts of the deck which do lock you. For example, First Move in Solo, which is also a very old but very good card for the deck. But the Ostinato, as I said, doesn't. So you could just go for your Melodious stuff in theory and then follow it up with whatever you like, be it Snake Eyes, be it Voiceless Voice. You can create a field of Link monsters before, for example, a free somewhat free Appaloosa, and then follow things through. And we get to resolve the effect of Bacha here. Also, let me just quickly fix you the life points of Dennis, because Dennis, nice of Brian to do that, but Dennis now has 10,000 life points due to a double Upstart Goblin being activated. And Brian cannot even stop reading Bacha. He cannot believe how powerful this card is, because not only does it search a monster, but also it gets to special summon out now another monster. Pretty impressive start here right away for Dennis. And Brian has his graveyard loaded up with spell cards, and therefore is able not only to activate the Widow Anchor to negate the opponent's monster, but also to take control of it. Which now is maybe an issue for him too, though, because if there is another Widow Anchor, he would not be able to activate that second copy of Widow Anchor anymore, as he now controls a monster. But let's see whether that is even a problem for him, as Dennis is still continuing to summon out monsters. He doesn't stop here just yet. And of course, Brian, maybe not super familiar with the new cards, but he's familiar enough with them to realize that now the second interruption that he has set there is going to come into place. Forbidden Droplet is going to negate the activation of that second Melodious monster coming down there. And now Dennis going through the graveyard. Still, like, Brian, after drawing so many cards, only essentially set up Widow Anchor and Forbidden Droplet. And the thing with those Orcust Sky Striker strategies is, usually, they don't play any kind of hand interaction. So you cannot really expect Ash Blossom and Joy Spring. You cannot really expect Nibiru, the Primal Being, or something like that. It relies on just having all those powerful field-breaking cards, like we just saw Widow Anchor, Forbidden Droplet, and all those kind of things. And therefore, now that Dennis played through Widow Anchor and Forbidden Droplet, it feels like he might be kind of good to go from here on. And it might be smooth sailing all the way from here. But let's not be too quick. Let's see how he executes this. Let's see whether he can set up a field that maybe is able to OTK this turn, maybe to go for game in this turn, end it quickly, end it right here. Because let me tell you, if Brian gets another turn, he is probably in a decent position to recover. I could see him, because like this deck is very much known to have a lot of resources. I can tell you that. This deck is very, very good with resources overall. And we have resources in the graveyard, which we don't really have that many of here at the moment. Like just spell cards, which is good for the striker part of the deck. But the Orcust part of the deck just really didn't get going last turn. So maybe if he gets another turn, he can also get that engine going then, which would be very, very helpful for him. And very needed too, because let's face it, that was not the start that he was looking for at all. He was trying to set up a lot, but he got to do very, very little there on the opening turn. So yeah, the Chopina was negated, as we saw. That was the first monster the Widow Anchor was used on, and then that card was basically also used to negate the Soprano. With the Melodious cards, of course, you may notice that they all are named after famous musicians. There was Bacha, the new extra deck card, named after Bach. And okay, so we got some monsters on the field. We also fusion summoned the other fusion monster that is now being splashed, but also there in the pure version of the deck, and that is Schuberta, another classic. And Schuberta actually is pretty cool, because Schuberta says during either player's turn you can target up to 3 cards in any graveyard and banish them, which is very, very powerful against the said Orcust part of the deck, because yeah, they want to have cards in their graveyard, and they need to use those cards in the graveyard very, very badly to get going. So if you, before they activate a Harp Horror, a Nightmare, or something like that, if you can go after these cards before they're able to activate them, before Brian is able to activate them, that might turn out to be a really, really, really big problem. But let's see whether he can still manage anyways. So, also, let's not forget, there's Arya, the Melodious Diva, on the field as well. And while Arya is special summoned on the field, Melodious monsters you control cannot be targeted by card effects or be destroyed by battle. And so, the Widow Anchor, which we, for example, just saw, is not going to work against all of the Melodious monsters on the field there currently. One card that we saw there that still works is Forbidden Droplet. So Forbidden Droplet would be a way to just get through those monsters here, and would maybe be the way to handle those things here. But yeah, as I was doing a very quick intro in the beginning, let me again tell you, this is the beginning of the national season. It's the first national championship of the entire season, and we are having many, plenty of them. I love that time of the year, having one big event after the other every weekend. Every weekend there's Yu-Gi-Oh! Action all weekend long, and this weekend we can start it off in style. Oh, that is a very preemptive usage of Vishuberta, banishing the Widow Anchor and banishing the Orcust monsters there from the graveyard as well. And looking at the hand of Brian, I think I see a lot of monster cards. And that's why the turn of him was over so quickly last turn, because he had the normal summon of Armageddon, and then that was refused, and then he had nothing after to play with anymore. So let's see whether that can change this turn now. He's looking for the graveyard. His resources aren't there in the graveyard anymore. So, oh, that doesn't look like a very powerful turn, as he just sets one monster and gives it back over to Dennis. And Dennis, with the new cards from Legacy of Destruction, with all the momentum right now, is going into his turn and now shows, which he didn't really even do that much last turn, that also there's pendulum cards in his deck that can be activated into the pendulum scales as well. Like, they have useful pendulum effects, as we just see him activating the Kublai there. And this says you can only pendulum summon light monsters. which is not that big of a problem when you're playing a monster full of light monsters, to be honest. And also, if you do not control any face-up monsters other than Melodious monsters, and there is only Melodious monsters basically in his deck, you can add one Melodious spell trap from your deck, which we just saw him doing. So that is now another fusion summon. We activate the effect of Refrain in the extra deck. This is looking good, and I'm interested in why Brian decided to not pick up his cards here, and I think he just wants to see more for the moment. He's not entirely certain about the whole Melodious deck, and he wants to use this game 1 now wisely to get to know all the cards completely. He wants to be sure, wants to make sure he's well equipped for maybe a potential game 2 and 3, and therefore that is what he's trying to do at the moment. Okay, that's just the battle phase. We see the set monster turns out to be a Harp Horror. That Harp Horror now is in the graveyard, where it is going to be able to do a lot more, of course. And nothing else is coming his way there. So that's everything he has to deal with for the moment. And I think we did summon out the Flowering Atoll, the Melodious Magnificat there. And that one is also kind of a good card, because it also is an interruption on the opponent's turn, saying as a quick effect you can banish until the end phase any number of Melodious monsters you control, and then you can return up to that many face-up cards your opponent controls to the hand as well. Which, I mean, is definitely quite strong. Brian drawing a card for turn. Is it going to be one that he can use? Because, as I said, cards like Widow Anchor and stuff, they just don't really do a whole lot against a Melodious deck that has Aria on the field. But now at least there is the Harp Horror in the graveyard. Harp Horror recently being bumped up on the Forbidden and Limited list. Now able to play more copies of it again. Brian shuffling through the 3 cards in his hand. Is he going to be able to do something with it? Thinking, almost summoning it, but not quite yet. And then is sitting there, calm as always, having Aria on the field. Okay, that's the normal summon of Girsu now. That's a very powerful normal summon that in 2019 you didn't really have, but now you have access to this card, which is a huge bump to the strategy. And on the summon of that, we can just send one Orcust card from our deck to the graveyard. And it looks like we're considering to send Orcust Nightmare or the Skeleton. He doesn't really know which one just yet, but that did look like a Skeleton to me. Okay, for now that's fine, Dennis says. So, double reading his own card now. Double reading the Girsu. And activating the second effect of Girsu, meaning both players would receive a token, and that is indeed going to happen here. There is the 1 token for Brian, and then, yeah, for sure both players would be able to get a token. Okay, going into that column right there. And Brian just double-checking probably, am I now locked out of enemy mechanics from my extra deck? Can I maybe now only summon Orcust monsters or something, or am I free to continue? Now going over the Sky Striker Ace Azalea in his extra deck, which would be a very interesting choice there. But I think, like, whatever we do, it will probably have to be a Link 2 monster. No immediate answer, and there comes the... Yeah, it is the Azalea. Interestingly enough, that is a card that has not seen huge popularity lately, but we are going to go for it here, and we do go out of a set card that Dennis has there. That is going to be met with the Impermanence. So I think it makes sense to use the Infinite Impermanence here, because the Azalea would have stayed on the field. If there's less than 3 spells in the graveyard, Azalea has to go to the graveyard after she used her summon effect. And... okay, yeah. Just double reading it again. But due to there being a lot of spell cards in the graveyard, of course, of Brian, we get to keep her on the field, and that impermanence therefore denies the battle phase effect of Azalea now. Dennis also having a quick read there. Why not? Everyone kind of nervous. Brian, of course, kind of being the favorite here because he did win this tournament. In this place even here in Den Haag 2 years ago. Back in the day, he did it with Sword Soul. But now he's relying on the Orcust Sky Striker strategy instead. And... okay, we are going to use the effect banishing the Azalea. But that means now, maybe after this, Brian is free to continue. As I explained to you earlier, that was the effect of the Flowering Atoll, the Melodious Magnificat. Just banishing herself there to banish the... to give back to the extra deck the Azalea of his opponent, of Brian. And now Brian going through the graveyard of Dennis, maybe trying to pick up as much information still as possible. Can he continue? Oh, that is a Shark Cannon, meaning there is indeed some use for the graveyard of Dennis. And we can just summon out the Orange Light that in the first turn was so devastating for his own turn, and now he's trying to build something up by himself with that card. Summoning it out because he, of course, still has 3 spell cards in the graveyard. I love to see those Sky Striker cards returning to the meta game. One of my favorite decks of all time, and now it's making a return here. And it looked very, very bad for Brian here for most of the time because he didn't get anything going, but now it almost seems like there's nothing really stopping him from playing here. But let's not be too quick because the pure Melodious deck, let me tell you that, does actually have a lot of space for non-engine cards in their deck because the engine is not super, super big. You can, as you see, easily play Herald of Orange Light, but there would technically, theoretically, also be space for more than that. But first of all, we're going to use these 2 monsters to go into Galatea. We brought out Nightmare from the deck, so that's an additional resource now, of course, in the graveyard. Galatea is going to put 1 card from the Banish Zone back, and we are going to set 1 Orcust spell trap card from our deck. And that is going to be Orchestrated Return. Normally you want to go for Babel to have great interruption on the opponent's turn, but I think Brian is just looking to somehow get into this game, somehow maybe get the cards he needs. I think he figured for the moment this is not going to be enough, so I need to draw more cards, and therefore I need another copy of Orchestrated Return here. But before... oh, okay. Oh, we even have a card to discard from the hand, though, so we don't have to give up the Galatea from field. We're going to send Harper from the hand, draw 2 more cards. I mean, it's kind of snowballing here, honestly. Like, Brian is getting more and more cards. He has his graveyard set up more and more. Dennis already used the bounce effect of his monsters, so I think he's... I mean, for like on the field, he's out of interruptions. Still, of course, the protection effect of Arias is there, but besides that, of Aria rather, she's not a Labyrinth monster. Yeah, overall, this, even though it looked very, very bad, and we just set a monster 1 turn, and we passed the first turn with no monsters, now might be the turn where Brian actually gets stuff going. Checking his graveyard again. That's what I like about the deck. Like Sky Striker Orcust, it was like that back in the day, but it is still like that. It's just a very grindy deck. It's not a very big combo deck where you set up a huge field even though you draw a lot of cards. You're just trying to grind the opponent out. You have set up in the graveyard like basically every turn, recycling your stuff through Galatea, through other cards as well. And you can just basically play the resource game forever, and you can then just grind your opponent down to a couple of cards, and you will come out on top as the game progresses. Like, the longer the game goes, I think the Orcust Sky Striker deck is usually favored to also take it down then. But for now, we are going to summon out the Dingirsu. Dingirsu is going to send that Aria to the graveyard. Let's see what's next. Is there anything else? I mean, for now, honestly, it looks really, really, really good. I think everyone will agree that this is a pretty decent start here overall for him. After having 2 turns of basically doing nothing, there's now a harp horror back on the field as well. Yeah, you can see by Dennis' facial expression, he would be happier if he would have just ended it last turn, if he would have had the power to push through on that first turn that he got there. Or it was even his second turn, where he only faced 1 set monster, but he couldn't capitalize. He did deal a little bit of damage, but it wasn't necessarily the greatest. So we just go into the battle phase, we get rid of the token that was summoned by the Girsu, and now we even get to attack for some damage with the Dingirsu. The Girsu, one of those unusual Exceed monsters that has a special way of summoning itself. Like, it's similar to, for example, Zeus. It's similar to the new Typhon, of course, which was the most recent addition to that set, I would say, mechanic. You can just actually summon it out on top of an Orcust Link monster. So that Galatea that was there previously now is the material of the Dingirsu, and then on the summon of that, you can even use the powerful effect of Dingirsu to either send 1 card on the field to the graveyard or attach 1 Orcust card from the banish zone, and we did send 1 card in that case. But now it goes over to Dennis again, and yes, that monster had to be banished to bounce the Azalea back to the extra deck, but in the end phase it does return, and that's so strong because now he starts off his turn fresh again with a very big monster on the field, and I'm pretty sure he's ready to rumble again. That Flowering Atoll has 2,800 attack points, so theoretically it would already be big enough to take care of that Dingirsu there, but Dingirsu also, additionally to that summon effect, has the ability to protect destruction for once. Oh yeah, and it looks like we're going to do that. That was only the battle phase. Dennis doesn't really get more stuff going here. The 1 Widow Anchor, the 1 Forbidden Droplet that Brian used early in the match, actually enough to kinda do it for him. Ooh, so I think Dennis might have forgotten about the protection effect of Dingirsu, because we attacked the Dingirsu, then Brian was protecting, and then after that, Dennis used the effect to banish the monster and put the Dingirsu back to the extra deck. But that did not really harm Brian too much. I think now, with another turn on his hands, Brian might be able to just get complete control of this game. Because Dennis just still has that one Flowering Atoll on the field, and it's not so much. Like, could be overcome here, quite honestly. So, there comes Skeleton, and Skeleton is going to use its graveyard effect, banishing itself to summon back out an Orcust monster from the graveyard. Just bring back the Galatea that went to the graveyard because it was the material of Dingirsu. And yeah, Dennis wastes no time. He's like, I'm going to get rid of that again, and there is Forbidden Chalice now. We do not only run the Forbidden Droplet, but also the Forbidden Chalice. And therefore, that is not going to happen. We're just not going to get any cards back to the extra deck or back to the hand here at all. And therefore, Brian can just continue, use the effect of that Galatea to now not having the need to draw more cards anymore, but rather being able to activate that Orchestrated Babel to the field. Rather set it first, but I'm pretty sure we're going to activate it soon after. There it is. There's the activation of the card too. And that now, in case you're not familiar with that card, means every Orcust effect from here on is going to be a quick effect. And that is so powerful because you are now able to just use a Harp Horror on your opponent's turn. You're even allowed to use a Galatea on your opponent's turn, and that can create some very, very powerful interruptions, and it makes it even harder for Dennis now to have a say in this game, I would say. Brian, out of nowhere, coming back into this game, and I love it. I love that Orcust Sky Striker is back on the map. And yeah, that Dingirsu now is back into the extra deck again, as it was put back into that last turn by Dennis, and we can summon it out freshly again. Here it comes. Sending it to the graveyard. Oh, and was Brian aware of the graveyard effect here, though? Did he realize that there is a graveyard effect for Etoile as well? Because if this face-up fusion summon card in its owner's control leaves the field because of an opponent's card, you can special summon one Melodious monster from your deck, or extra deck. So we are even able to access the extra deck through that. The only question I would have though is it at this point still considered to be fusion summoned even? Because it returned through its own effect, but that is called by the grave there from Brian. So the 2 drawers that we got last turn off of the orchestrated return, maybe like one of them was either the chalice or the called by the grave, but that is huge because we deny that graveyard effect there, and that is just stopped Dennis in his tracks here. Looks like we're entering the battle phase. Dengisu attacking, connecting for some damage here. There is the Haporo also attacking. And Gisu, last but not least, also putting in some damage. And is that going to be enough maybe to even seal the deal? Not yet, but we can still use the effect of Nightmare. And Nightmare is not only going to send the card, but he's also going to boost the attack there of a monster. I think that was Brian's way of trying to go for game here, putting the life points of Dennis down to 0. But that was denied by Dennis. He held that orange light in hand very, very long, and he now had to use it on the Nightmare, because otherwise I believe the game would have been over. Still, the situation for Dennis doesn't look incredibly good here. So Brian cannot end it here, but he still has a lot of monsters on the field. He has Babel now set up on the field, being able to interact with his opponent as well with Orcust Quick Effect. He still has a main phase too, where he can summon out Link monsters as well, because he's by no means locked into anything but Dark monsters. And Dark monsters, there's plenty in his extra deck, I can tell you that. We see SP Little Knight, one of the options in his extra deck. After a very, very long and grindy game, it's still not over. Also, of course, putting that Dingius into the graveyard could create a nice interaction with Skeleton. And okay, we just link off these 2 monsters, go into IP Masquerena. Dennis activating now the effect of his monster in the scale. So there is some momentum to be gained here again, because I think we just searched Ostinato there. That did look like Ostinato to me at the very least. Did we just search Ostinato? Oh, Pot of Prosperity being used next. All right. So Dennis, it's crazy how both of these games, both of these decks so far have been kind of slow in what they did, but they're still absolutely present and around here in this game. And there we see it. There is Effect Veilers, there's Impermanences, there's Ash Blossoms. So theoretically, Dennis has plenty of ways to interrupt Brian's turn, but he just didn't have access to any of them there. And I mean, now those are obviously not going to help him. We picked out the First Movement Solo, though, and First Movement Solo might be something that helps him a lot here instead, because First Movement Solo can just special summon out one Melodious monster from the deck. And there it is, summoning out another copy of, I think this is Kublai. I'm always struggling to pronounce those musicians. I'm a Yu-Gi-Oh player, not a musician. But, oh wait, I think it was Refrain, right? Refrain? Yeah, that is Refrain, for sure. It's Refrain on the field and Kublai in the Pendulum Zone right now. Okay, checking the graveyard again here for Brian. He has to find a good spot here to use his IP Masquerena. He decides that is not yet. We're going to let Dennis continue. It's crazy how grindy this first game is. This is what Brian is here for this weekend. He wants to grind out wins with his Sky Striker Orcust strategy. He brought his deck from 2019. I talked to him in the lobby of the hotel yesterday, and he even said those are the cards from back in the day. Those are the literal cards that he used in 2019 already, and he still had them. He valued the deck so much back in the day, so he wanted to keep the cards around. And now, after summoning out Arya, we get to use the effect of Orcust Harp Horror, special summoning out one monster from the deck. And that's great, because now we summon out Skeleton. And Skeleton will probably be used together with the IP Masquerena as a link material into something else, but that will bring the Skeleton then into the graveyard, where it can bring out the Dingisu again, but not just yet. That is for now just theory, and Dennis is first of all allowed to continue, and he's going to use is the fusion spell of the deck, Melodious Concerto. And the funny thing about Melodious Concerto is you can actually use Pendulum Zones as fusion materials for the fusion summon of the monster that you're going to bring out. And that is indeed what he's going to do here. And afterwards, the Pendulum Scales are just going to activate itself again, which is pretty crazy. So we before had 1 Pendulum Scale and no fusion monsters, and now we traded that for 2 Pendulum Scales and a fusion monster in our extra monster zone as well. There is a second copy of Refrain also coming to the field now again. Honestly, the Melodious deck is one of those decks, in its pure form or as an engine, that I could totally see winning this entire event this weekend. It is definitely a great deck. And I think in Legacy of Destruction, a lot of people were immediately being very quick on looking at Tenpai. Tenpai, of course, is a super crazy strategy from Legacy of Destruction as well, that we have plenty of players running in the tournament as well, so we're probably going to see it here in the feature too. But the Melodious cards were kind of sleeping on, and then all of a sudden, people realized, hey, those new support cards for Melodious are actually really, really, really good and really, really exciting, and they make the deck very viable, and therefore I think it is, like, as we saw, Brian had to read a lot of those cards. I think it's still, to some people, kind of a sleeper deck, but it is very, very much super, super powerful and very much capable of at least topping this event and maybe even taking it down altogether. So, next up, we're continuing to bring monsters to the field, so I'm wondering when Brian wants to use his interruption, use his effect of IP Masquerade, because so far he has not decided to do so. Okay, but now it's time. We go for the summon of Longyesu. Look at that, and the good thing with Longyesu is now, due to the orchestrated Babel being on the field, able to use its effect on the opponent's turn. And that is so powerful because it actually can send cards it points to the graveyard, and immediately that is what Brian is going to do. That is going to... Yeah? Is he going to? Okay, yes, we go for the Link Summon. Use the Graveyard effect. So that one is also, of course, very powerful. Now, like Bloomhammer, the Melodious Composer, the Link 2 monster, is kind of one of the cards that locks you into just summoning Melodious monsters for the entire turn, though. So even before summoning Melodious, you cannot conduct any other cannot conduct any other summons than Melodious monsters, and therefore it's basically only able to be used in the pure Melodious strategy. Alright, double reading on the Longyesu again. We still have the skeleton in the graveyard. Time is ticking down overall too, though. Like, out of very little, once again, Dennis made very much. Every turn here so far in this game has been a build-up back and forth, and that is a day still. Even if you lose here, you can still go through, win every other round, and be a top cut contestant. And yes, now the confirmation. Dennis did indeed not manage to break through that setup of Brian there, and is going to start game 2 here because he did lose game number 1. We are activating Pot of Prosperity here first. And Brian kind of leaning back. He has one game in the bag, so he kind of has at least a draw secured here. But of course, he's looking for the win. And we're now going to look at the top 6 cards of the deck of Dennis, revealing Ghost Mourner Impermanence. Then First Movement Solo, which looked definitely decent in the last game. It wasn't enough entirely, but it definitely was a good starter for him there. And that is going to be the card he follows it up with. First Movement Solo is going to special summon out one Melodious monster from the deck. Which one is it going to be? This time not going for any of the Pendulum monsters. Going for a different approach this time. And that, of course, was one copy of Arya right away. And Arya it's kind of telling when you summon out Arya first, because that means all of his other monsters are going to be protected now. Arya is special summoned on the field, so the special summoned Melodious monsters will be protected. We now get to summon Rifrain. We are activating also the Melodious Concerto. The Concerto is ready to put some fusion monsters onto the field, and we did summon out the big fusion monster there into the extra monster zone. But so far, Brian seems unimpressed, honestly. He doesn't care just yet. He's like, all right, keep on going, keep on going. So this was, of course, Bacha again. Bacha additionally now says the activated effects of your Melodious fusion monsters cannot be negated, which of course is a very, very strong addition to the already applying effect of Arya, saying that Melodious monsters you control cannot be targeted by card effects. So that is definitely quite the setup he already has there. But one card that is so problematic to the deck, one card that we saw in game number 1 already interrupting him, is Forbidden Droplet. And I think if Brian has another copy of Forbidden Droplet here in this game number 2, this could be his way of still breaking through the field that Dennis currently is setting up. So we are summoning back. We are bringing out all of those monsters. There is still the Arya on the field, but it now is also joined by Chopina, the Melodious Maestra. And that seems like it's it. All right, 2 Pendulum Scales. We have a set card in our back row. And it's on Brian now. Does he have a way to break this? I mean, first of all, whatever happens, I think it's pretty certain to say that Brian is just going to activate a lot of spell cards this turn. And we're going to go for the Reinforcement of the Army. Probably one of the oldest cards in his entire deck. We're going to go for that card first. And yeah, maybe this time Armageddon Knight gets to resolve its effect. We are certainly going to search that one out. Last game, it was devastatingly met with the effect of Herald of Orange Light. But maybe this time it can do better. Maybe this time it will apply its effect, send one dark monster from the deck to the graveyard. But first of all, we're going Orchestrated Return. Look at that. We're collecting spell cards in the graveyard. That's what a Striker deck loves to do. Discarding Harp Horror, if I saw correctly. Draw more cards. Now with 2 spell cards in the graveyard. And I think I see an Engage in his hand. So he needs one more to also get off the additional effect of Sky Striker Mobilize Engage to draw an extra card there. Okay. What's next? Okay, oh, we have to activate the Engage already, meaning we will not be able to draw an additional card through it. That is kind of a bummer, not gonna lie. But apparently none of the other spell cards in the hand of Brian were able to activate. We are searching for Hornet Drones, activating the Hornet Drones now as well. So if we get to, in the end, summon out Kagari here to add back the Engage, that then would be a way to at least have the second activation of Engage be one with an additional draw. But Dennis is saying not so quickly. We are going to use now our effect, banishing the Chopina to also get rid of the token there on the field. So this time, interestingly enough, deciding not to banish the monster itself. Last game, we saw him always banishing the Etoile, the Melodious Magnificate, but this time he doesn't do that. And normal summon Armageddon Knight follows. That is met with Herald of the Orange Light again. Uh-oh, that was bad news for him first game. Is it still going to be bad news for him this game as well? And please note, Arya does not only protect from targeting, it also says the Melodious monsters cannot be destroyed by battle, which is a huge addition there. We now go Harp Horror though, special summoning out one Orcust monster from the deck. Dennis used the Orange Light. Dennis used the effect to put that Sky Striker token back away from the field. And right away, the impermanent is now also going to be used. So Dennis, just with very little time on the clock, trying to activate his interruptions as quickly as possible. But there is triple tactic talents by Brian. And yes, you cannot target those Melodious monsters, but yes, you can instead just take control of them with triple tactic talents, as that does not target. We're going to use both of these monsters now. Going to link summon into Galatea. Galatea, of course, able to use its effect because there is the Harpora banished, and indeed that's what we're going to do. Putting the Harpora back into the deck, activate Orchestrated Babel. Now activating it after it was set there through Galatea. Anything else though? Do we have a way to deal damage or anything? Oh, that is a Widow Anchor. Alright. Just taking over the monster and putting it into attack position, meaning Brian will certainly be able here to deal some damage. I mean, probably a card that he does not have to fear here is going to be Nibiru. Nibiru is usually a card you want to side out against Orcust. And, ooh, look at that. We summon out the Dingirsu over the Galatea, sending the Pendulum Scale, sending the Couplet. Going into the battle phase, attacking with both monsters here, leaving a big gap in terms of life points between the life points of Brian and the life points of Dennis. Linking off the Etoile, the Melodious Magnificate, and the Dingirsu to go into, what is it going to be? Oh, we just go for SP Little Knight, using the on-summon effect of SP Little Knight. Oh, but also we're going to trigger the graveyard effect there. Going to put back and also draw a card, but there is going to be the Refrain also banished. So the timer on our screen has run out, but the judge has a special timer running, so they might have some more seconds left here. Not much, I can tell you. The judge already has the phone out, so this should be the last couple of seconds left here for this game. Can Dennis overcome the deficit in life points? Is he going to be able to bounce back here? He bounced back a lot of monsters from Brian, but is he going to be able to bounce back into this game? No, he is not. Brian Kaiser